This has a 4-speed transmission, and I'm going to be changing the transmission fluid and filter on it today. This is the transmission pan, and as you can see, it's pretty crusty. It has 10mm bolts going around it. We gotta take them all out. Yeah, you should have a new filter and gasket before you do this. And if your pan looks like this, probably a new pan. I knew that this pan was in pretty bad shape, so I got a new pan for it. Otherwise I wouldn't be hammering at it. But clearly you can tell that it was a matter of time before it started leaking. Fluid looks pretty clean so far though. Surprised. If you're trying to keep your pan, then you loosen it mostly on one corner and then loosen a little bit all around the rest and slowly tear it apart so it doesn't splash everywhere. I got this going into a drain pan, of course. Since I got a hole in it, I'm just gonna let it drain out, and then once it drains out completely, I'm gonna start taking the pan off. And here I have transmission filter and a new transmission pan gasket. That one has a drain plug on it. Obviously gonna clean it out because there's some dust in there and stuff. And when we get the old pan off, we need to clean off the magnet and put it back on here in the same spot. I'm gonna loosen all of these, not that much, just some of them a little more than others. But I'm gonna loosen all the bolts around here. And then just make sure I can break them free. Be careful not to break the bolts because these ones are old too. I got all the bolts broken free now. So I'm gonna start loosening them on this corner so this side lowers first. That way the rest of the fluid in the pan goes through the hole, and then I'll take all the bolts out in the middle and I'll save the outside ones for last, and then one by one take them out while holding the pan and slowly lower it down, and then we'll see what's inside the pan. I got all the bolts out except for this bolt and a bolt on the other side over there. So the last person that put this back together used a gasket maker to seal. So I'm just gonna go get a little pry bar or screwdriver and try to pry down on that. The remaining bolts that are in are backed off a little, so I'll be able to pry it open. I was able to pry it open. It still has one bolt in it, but I'm about to take that off. And then I'm gonna lower the pan. I got the pan down. So, doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna take that magnet off, clean it up, and put it on the other pan. And there's the bottom. You want to make sure you clean this all the way around so it seals good. So I'm gonna have to take all that stuff off and make sure it's clean all the way around. So the two screws holding this in are T20. So I'm just finishing taking this out and then I can drop the filter. Careful because it can splash you. Okay, I'll leave this over there. So I'm gonna wait for this to slow down with the drips. And in the meantime, I'm gonna take that magnet out right here and clean it up, and we're gonna put it in the new pan. Alright, I got the pan ready. I cleaned off the magnet and put it right there in place where it's supposed to go. And I'm just gonna move the old stuff out of the way, clean the old gasket material up, and of course, don't forget to put the filter on first. So that's what I'm gonna do next. So right now I'm gonna put the filter in, and you make sure you wanna look in there, because sometimes the O-ring from the old one is still in there. It still is in this case, so I'll just pop it out without scratching anything, and then we'll be able to put the filter in place and put the screws in. Now that the new filter is in, I'm just gonna clean up around the outside and then gonna put the new pan in place and put it back together. I cleaned off around the edges on the transmission, and I lined up the gasket, and I loosely put 2 bolts in here. I'm gonna put the rest in. Make sure you put all the bolts in loosely first before you start tightening it down. That way you can make sure they go in easily. And I'm gonna put the rest in now. I got all the bolts in first, and then I tightened them all across from each other. You don't want to put them too tight because you can damage the transmission threads or break the bolt. But it's time for me to put some transmission fluid in it now. Under the hood, there's a cap here for the transmission fluid dipstick. It doesn't come with one. You can buy one though if you want. I got a funnel like this to make it easier to put fluid in. You want to make sure in here is clean. You don't want any dirt or anything in there. And I'm gonna put 4 quarts of ATF plus 4 in there, because that's the service fill on it. I got a screen for that. Here's the 4 quarts. Now I'm gonna start dumping it in here. You don't want to let it overflow. Do the same for the other 3. That was the last jug, so 4 quarts are in there. Now after I put the cap back on there, I'm going to start the car and run it through the gears. And then after you do that, that would be the time to check it with a dipstick if you have one. And after I do that, I'm going to have it running, and I'm going to go underneath and make sure there's no leaks or anything. And then we're going to be good to go. So I have the car started. I'm just gonna switch from park to reverse. Okay, feel it kick in, so neutral, drive. Okay, going into gear. Alright, so now I'm going to go underneath with it still running and check for leaks. Looks good.